All right. How's everybody doing tonight? Sorry that I was late. I apologize. I was over at John's. We were doing a live stream. Michael Bancroft come on. We started talking about dreams and mythology, and I lost track of all time. Anyways, so if someone could just give me a quick shout out in the chat to let me know that you can hear me, and I'll just start talking after that. Excuse me. Just to let anybody know who is new here, I just usually talk about 10 to 15 minutes about my topic, and then George says you can hear me, great, and then I just answer questions. So anybody wants to put any questions in the chat. Oh, look who shows up. Here we go. Look, let's see, add to stage. Give me 1 second. Why is John not showing up? Oh, I know. There we go, John. How you doing, John?
I'm having this recurring dream that you and I just talked, and now
Yeah, this is weird. Well, I think we just did this. I was going to talk about inspiration tonight. I had done this before, but one of the things that I was doing over the last little bit was I actually went over to the Marvel Twitter site, right, where they're supposed to put the comics and the stuff like that. And I went down a full 10 minutes and I saw one post with comics. That was it. Like the lackluster amount of any kind of, I don't know, any kind of feeling for comics, let alone any kind of promotion for comics, was just gone, right? It was all movies, television, everything else. And I'm thinking to myself, there seems to be a slowing down, not just the mainstream, but with the indie comics as well. So I'm looking for inspiration, and I'll ask you while you're here, John. So your inspiration is I don't know, your giant collection of comics, but where do you think that people who actually want to make comics right now would get inspiration to do something?
I can't speak for other people, because sometimes I listen to the inspirations. I'm just like, that makes no sense to me. But like, it's not that I get inspired by my big collection. It's just that I love superheroes and stories, so I built a big collection. You know what I mean? But I don't like. I talk to my friends, and they're just like, they like the idea of doing something creative, and it's a fun hobby. You know, other people just like, I got this burning desire to tell these stories, and I need to get them out of me. I know. I just. It's gonna sound weird, but like I've been living in this world that I created with my friends in the role playing game, and I kind of want to have it codified. You know what I mean? So like, you know, it's like I made this world of superheroes and these consistent rules and this continuity, and I'm 57, and you know, how many years left do I have? Like, I'd like to be able, like, these 6 comics. This is what I spent 20 years living in this world. If anybody wants to check it out, is that morbid? I don't know.
I don't think it is, actually, because, well, you do construction anyways, and you're like me, I think. Is like, I want to build something that lasts, right? Or something that's going to be here for a little while, at the very least.
Yeah. So like, you know, like, I'm not really making any money on my comics, but that's not really the point. I mean, I would like to. I would like to not spend money on making my comics. So back Heroic Tales #2, but it's more important. Just like, I just want to get these stories out, and some, like, maybe 20 years down the line, some like weirdo comic book guy be like, found these Heroic Tales comics, and I kind of want to build on them and live in this world for a while, something like that. You know, like how some people have taken the Black Terror. You know, the guys who created the Black Terror, these guys must be long gone. You think they would be happy that their creations are still being used, and people are still using them to tell stories with? So I don't know. I'd like to see, like, not right now, the Patriarch's my toy to play with, but I'd like to see at some point, like, somebody, I like that character, I want to make a story about the Patriarch, but please don't have the Patriarch serial killer or cannibal like what they're doing with Winnie the Pooh and all that stuff. You know.
Gonna take a quick look at who's here. Jewel is here. George is here over from your channel as well. Pedro, Michael, a lot of people, a lot of regulars here. George says, he's got the first question. He says, went to my LCS today. Not even an independent caught my eye. See, that's the thing. It's like there's a lackluster, I don't know. There's no real excitement for comics out there. And that's why I wanted to do a thing about inspiration, is that there needs to be inspiration in order to have good comics. That's my thought, right? It's not just telling stories, it's telling good stories, or at the very least stories that you think are good, right?
I do think, like, modern comics, like comic books, serve the purpose of like Greek mythology. Like, it's supposed to be like Superman is our Hercules. Green Lantern is our Odysseus. Batman is, whatever, Odin. These are our mythological characters. And I think twisting them and changing them is like killing our culture. Could you imagine like the Greeks all of a sudden started telling stories that like, oh no, Hercules was the bad guy and Zeus was a foppish fool, and that would be the downfall of classical Greek. For all I know, that is what happened. Once we start like attacking our own legends and stuff like that, like is the society itself too far be? I don't know. That
I think part of what you're trying to say, I think, is the fact that what I'm always going on about is the fact that stories basically is what a society tells about themselves, right? And if you're going to tell stories about yourself that you hate yourself, no one's gonna care. No one wants to read that. No one wants to stick their head into that. I mean, there's got to be some kind of light at the end of the tunnel of, we want to be at the very least like ourselves, right? Like the country that you live in.
Like are we past the golden age of American society? Like we had all of these, George Washington couldn't tell a lie, and and crossing the Delaware, and then like I'm trying to think of like John Henry, outpaced the steam. We had all these like great inspirational stories, and now it's like the Fantastic Four, they flew into space, got powers, and overcame like adversity and stuff. And now we're making a movie where the father figure is going to be an ineffectual whip. It's like, are we dooming ourselves? Like there is like Alan Moore says it, there's like a power in a story, and like what you said, look at the way, look at the stories we're telling. Like, are we telling the stories of a society in decline? You're more philosophical than me, and I know you articulate my thoughts better than I do. Like, am I making sense?
Like, you're making sense, but I'll go in an odd direction with this.
Okay.
So I was watching, was over at a friend's house watching Stanley Cup playoff game, and some Ram truck commercials come on, and they're going through basically the Ram trucks throughout the decades and what they look like and things like that, right? And it's basically when you got to the 70s and the first muscle truck and all these kinds of things. And then they got into the 90s and the early 2000s. And those trucks were so generic. And I thought to myself, there's the problem right there. The problem is those trucks are no longer American trucks. They're no longer built in America. They're no longer the spirit of America. They're just something you can get anywhere. They can be built anywhere. Anyone could build them. And there's nothing unique about them, right? That's the kind of story I think we need to get back to. I go on about the nonsense of basically globalism a lot on my channel, but there is, if you can't ground your story in a time and a place that's actually significant, like my country now, and it can only be built here now in this place, then how in the world is anybody supposed to connect to that? Even if it's a foreigner could connect to that and say, yeah, that's an American story. That's what we're missing right now. That's what if you ask me.
It's funny that you said that, because my foreman is a big anime fan and manga fan. And he was telling me just today about some anime fan. I forget what it's called, but it's all American rock and roll. Like every character is like, there's one character's name is Cars from the band The Cars, and one character is named after Led Zeppelin, and one's ACD. And he says it's just like, he goes, these American guys just study, these Japanese guys, excuse me, they study America, classic rock, and they put it as basis for their stories. These guys love like American culture, like as if they were like anthropologists studying it, and like makes it like, leave it to a foreign country to examine us and figure out what makes us take and tell great stories. My father always used to say, like, you want to find a patriotic American, go to Ireland. These guys love America. You go to the average Irish guy's house at the time in the 70s when my father, he goes, they got a picture of Jesus on the one wall, John F. Kennedy in the middle, and an American flag, and they don't even live in America.
No,
and now we're saying we're evil now.
No, but quite honestly, John, one of my friends when I was growing up in the high school, right? his father was from Ireland. His mother was from, I don't know, Boston, but they moved to Canada, and it went to the house in Canada, right? And picture of the Pope on the wall, picture of John F. Kennedy, American flag, right?
Yep.
Not they don't live in America. One they don't like the father was from Ireland, and the mother lived a brief time in America, but honestly, that was their house.
Jewel says, Mystical Montreal says, something I've wondered if American culture and Canadian pop culture are that distinct from each other. I will say this: my wife is Canadian, so we will go to Canada every once in a while, like to visit her relatives, or she wants to show me where she goes. And every time I go to Canada, I am totally aware that I'm in a different country.
Oh yeah,
it's almost like the pod people, like not sinister, but it's like, oh, they're like us, but they're different.
That's the way I felt first time I went to Ireland. It was like, takeaway. What the heck is takeaway?
Yeah, it is really, and it's funny because I think I'm banned from Canadian Airlines. I had to leave early last time we went because my mother-in-law died, so we flew out to Vancouver to clear out of her apartment. But I had to leave and go to work. My wife took an extra week, so I was in the airport by myself, and I put my wallet in the TSA, and then I just ran, and I forgot my wallet, so I had to go all the way back, and now I have to, I got like minutes to spare before I could get back, and so I just asked a lady, like, is there any way I could get in front of the line? And the lady was on the phone, and she was just turning, and I could hear her. She's having a private conversation, and I said, I don't mean to be rude, but I need to go. I explained this, and she's like, I hate my job. She just yells at me. So I said, so quit your job. It's not my fault. And she called the cops on me. I almost got arrested. And I was like talking to the police, come over, and they're like, why did you? And that's the one who yelled at me. I'm like, she told me, she started yelling at me. Go look at it on the camera. And they were going to ban me from flying. I said, okay, you want this crazy American New Yorkers here in Vancouver with no way to get home? I said, you guys do not know what you're asking for. So the cops go, I would let them get on that plane and never come back. But I was just like the point of my story is, like, the cops, I was guilty until I had to prove myself innocent. Like, I don't know how the Canadian law system works, but I'm like, I'm in a foreign country. Nothing reminds you that you're in a foreign country when they're dealing with the authorities. Right away, I'm just like, I'm innocent too. I don't have to show my ID. I didn't do it. I'm like, oh, I'm not protected by constitutional rights. Like, I literally don't know what the rules are in Canada. The
rules in Canada, well, they don't have the what's their motto? Basically, it's the American motto is life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. For
Right.
Canada, it's peace, order, and good government. So basically, if you're threatening order, like, you can be standing on a street corner and basically get arrested because, especially these days, because other people don't want you there, because you being there is going to disrupt the order.
Wow. Say that again. Peace,
order, and good government.
That is terrifying. That is legitimately one of the scariest things I've ever heard, because, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness describes individual rights. The individual is but order, that is collectivism.
Yep. That's why they can, and they have people show up as, like, basically a counter protester, and they're just standing on the sidewalk with a sign, and they'll go arrest them even if they've done nothing, because you might cause other people to get upset and violent. Therefore, we're taking you and we're going to put you into custody, protective custody. Basically, we're going to arrest you because you're threatening order.
Peace, order, and good government. Oh my God, that makes my blood chill. I at the risk of getting political here, talking about your inspiration, but I've been going on and on and on. But me and my wife talking about, like, why is everything getting scary right there? I said, because it's a concerted attack against Western values. The West has, and I'm not saying white people, I'm saying the West has this concept of individual liberty. It didn't develop in South America. It didn't develop in Africa or China, or it developed in Europe, and from Europe it came to the United States. And to enact this globalist government, we need they need to destroy the concept of the individual's rights. The individual is the, and that's why I think we having all this mass immigration and diversity and stuff. We're importing people, has nothing to do with race, has to do with philosophy and concept of government. We're importing people that don't have this individual concept of individual rights, and it's almost like the Assyrian Empire. They would scatter everybody. They took over Israel and scattered the 12 tribes and moved these people to the Great Diaspora, and now there's no connecting culture, So
Trey, I will get to your question, but John, you're exactly right. If you ask me, the whole thing is, and that's why they hate Christianity as well, because the whole idea of rights come out of Christianity, right? It comes out of medieval philosophy, basically people musing on the rights of God and how that transfers to man because we're made in his image. That's why they hate that. And I always talk about like places like Dubai, where they don't have any idea of intent, right? Like they have no idea of intent because they have no idea of what rights are. It's like you can be arrested by, like, say if you're a woman and you get assaulted, they're going to arrest the woman because she did something against the moral code, but it was against her will. But they don't care if it's against her will or not, because intent doesn't matter. She did something, she has no intent. And the whole thing about rights, they have no concept of rights. The whole idea of rights is a Western society, civilization idea, and it's an attack on that, and America especially, because of inalienable rights. It's the only major country that believes that you're born with those rights instead of given them to you by the government.
Yes, so I it's funny because when I go to Canada, I haven't gone since I had that confrontation with the police, but I'm like, I didn't know that. That's terrifying. What is it again? Peace, order, and good government.
Yep, peace, order, and good government.
Oh my God, that is like that is like Big Brother. Oh God, sorry, Canadians. And by the way, isn't this making comics fun again? This conversation.
Okay, we'll get to Trey's question here. He wants to know Eleutheria, where the character came from. Eleutheria is an actual historical figure, basically from. It wasn't not the Iliad, but what the heck is the name of it? It's one of the Iliad cycle. It's one of the books, the ancient books that go in the Iliad cycle. So she was an Amazonian that came in, and I can't remember. It's the fall of Troy. Quintus Marinus, I think it is the fall of Troy.
The Aeneid?
What's that?
Is it the Aeneid?
No. It's the fall of Troy. It's a separate book in itself, and it's by Quintus Marinus, if I remember correctly. Anyways, she's one of the Amazonians that come in when the Amazonians come in to fight against or on the side of the Trojans at that time. Anyway, so that was the inspiration for that character, because I wanted to go with an Amazonian, basically a play off of number one, Wonder Woman, but also if you got the map for Thomas Valiant, you'll notice that character is the actual mythological character that they base their version of the Statue of Liberty off of, and she represents fortitude. So there's a lot going on with that character. But so that's the answer to that question, Trey. Let's see. I'm just going to scroll down and see if I can get through some of these comments here. PB&J says, RJ, you said in the past that you're not a fan of Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles due to the Turtle Mania in the 90s, but what about the original Mirage story?
Mirage, that was their original comics, I think.
Well,
I always hated the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. I had an irrational hatred. I actually picked up issue number 1 in the store when it came out. I was working at the comic store, and Larry, the owner, was like, "You should buy this." And I was like, they're making fun of comic books. They're making fun of Frank Miller. And I was like outraged by it. And I didn't read Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles until Tonic Ball was like, "You got to read it." So now I'm up to issue 2, and I got to say, it's a good comic. I'm up as of issue 2, of the original run. It's a good comic. But yeah, I'm with RJ. I couldn't stand them for the longest time.
I had my nose at a joint for an entirely different reason. It was the fact that I was a collector of comic books and I wanted the price of them to go up. And here was this nothing out of nowhere black and white comic that all of a sudden was worth so much money. I was like, this does not deserve to be worth that much money. It just doesn't. right? It was expensive.
Yeah. I call it my $180,000 mistake. I can't believe I had that comic in my hand, and I was like, irrationally angry at it.
We got a question here. It says anti-whiteism ends with you. Okay, RJ, are you familiar with
Bizarchive?
Bizarchives or Donald Kent art? No, I am not. Donald Kent art. I'm not off the top of my head. I really am not. Which NHL team was I cheering for? It was a Canadiens game, so I was going for the Canadiens. I don't like the Capitals. I think they're playing the Capitals, if I remember correctly. I'm not really that into hockey. It's just everybody else was watching it. So,
yeah, my wife likes the Winnipeg Jets because she was from Winnipeg.
Oh, okay. I know some people from Winnipeg. They're very heavily into the Jets as well.
I'm looking at the question. I'm avoiding the political ones. I'm Albertan, so I have a natural wariness and skepticism towards the feds. Yeah, it seems like the Albertans are my favorite Canadians. Where is Corner Gas? I like that show. I just like that show a lot because it's just goofy, wholesome. Guy runs a gas station reading Savage Dragon. That guy, Brett Butt, he's always reading a comic book, and I always have my wife pause it so I can see he's always reading Savage Dragon. I wonder if he knows the later issues where it's basically disgusting. I won't even get into in describing what's happening in those comics later. Oh, Corner Gas is in Saskatchewan. Okay.
Ryan says, RJ, I believe the greatest, the most inspirational hero story is always David versus Goliath. That's funny. Because I was just going to think there is a comic book character based on it, but I'm not. I'm thinking of Samson. There is old Samson comics, and they brought him back in. I can't remember what was the Dynamite stuff.
Oh yeah, there was a comic called Project Superpowers where they brought back. Yeah. But they do what they always do with these. They were trapped in a mystical prison, so now they're in the modern world, but they're the same age as they were. Alan Moore did it. Project Superpowers did. I mean, I like them, but let's come up with like another. I would like to see these public domains, but they're still set in the 40s. That's. Would you use public domain characters?
Well, yeah, like I said before, I use public domain characters as like a backstory, but not as a main character, right? So basically, as the mythology, if we keep on doing Kit Fox stories, the mythology of Kit Fox progresses and more characters come into the public domain. Basically, there'll be like a hall of fame as he walks down the hallway talking to somebody, and there'll be pictures on the wall of predecessors that came before him in his line, which would be public domain characters, something like that.
Well, I know this is mean, and I don't mean to hurt anybody's feelings, but like I look at using public domain characters as like you become a musician and then you're just a cover band. You know what I mean? Like I want to use write my own songs, so I want to make my own characters. But like if you want to be in a cover band, that's fine, but like I don't want to use other people's characters that much. The only European comics I've read that had no nudity were Life Zero and The Adventures of Tintin. I haven't read. I'm so mad because I just bought a box set of The Adventures of Tintin, and you could see that there's a book missing. So I looked. They took out Tintin and Congo because of like the way they drew black people. But it's like I spent $100. I knew what I was getting. I'm not some little kid. You know what I mean? I'm a collector. But don't censor my work. So now I got to go find an old copy of Tintin and Congo and stick it in there.
Anti-White says, have you read the poem A Song of Naked Lands? I don't think I have read that, quite honestly. I thought I read there's a lot of Robert Howard stuff, like the boxing stuff I've never read. So there could be I'm not sure what story that would be under.
Zach then says, I think there's a difference between public domain characters and classical characters. Yeah, like would you consider Zorro or Sherlock Holmes to be public domain or classic? That's a good point.
Yeah, I would consider like Sherlock Holmes to be classic.
Because, I'm working on a mythological story, so I am going to make a story with some mythological character. So yeah, I guess in a way I am using somebody else's character. So I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out of my butt.
Clivey says, RJ, do you think that the fact that Star Wars Revenge of the Sith is a 20-year-old movie is making bank at the box office going to do anything to wake up Hollywood Disney? I'm not entirely sure I understand that question.
The Revenge of the Sith is in the movie theaters right now, and it's like the #1 movie in America.
So really? I did not know that.
Do you think the movie studio is going to be like, okay, enough's enough. This is what the people want. They want, I hate to call it Revenge of the Sith classic entertainment because, it seems like it was 3 weeks ago to me. But like, I want to say, I think they're going to do the same thing. What was his name? Dan DiDio was complaining because they were doing facsimile editions of classic DC comics, and he was livid that they were selling better than the new DC comics. So they canceled the facsimile editions. Like, at some point, I think these people are insane. Like,
yeah. I was actually thinking about doing a video about this weekend. Not sure if I'm going to do it about it, but it's basically, we don't have the intelligence level within the people that make these things anymore for them to actually recreate those kinds of movies. They just don't. Even 20-year-old ones. We don't have the people left, and we don't have the people left at the comic book companies or making television shows. Like, they can't make a 1980s, 1990s, 2000s television show, movie, comic book. They just are not at that skill level anymore.
Yeah. I remember Tom Brevoort tweeted, and he said, I've been working at Marvel Comics for 35 years. And me being a jerk, I said, congratulations, you've been in charge of the decline of Marvel Comics. So he goes, I'm sorry comics aren't as good as they were when you were 10 years old, John. And then he blocked me. And my response would have been like, dude, when I was 10 years old, we were getting John Byrne, Chris Claremont doing the X-Men, and Walt Simonson doing Thor. It's like, that should be your goal, to make comics that good. Like, that's a self-own. Like, you just admitted that you can't make good comics, and I'm the bad guy here, But so I agree with you. I don't think people in charge are capable of making good stories. Like, why is it, RJ? Why can't people make good stories anymore? Why are they incapable of a fun movie? Now when I hear that they're making a movie about something, I get filled with dread. Like, if they say, Indiana Jones has already been destroyed, but I'm trying to think of something that I love for my child. Okay, they're going to make a Johnny Quest movie. I'm like, no, please. I want to hire a witch doctor to curse it so that the movie gets canceled at this point. Just stop remaking stuff. You're not capable of it anymore.
Quite honestly, I think it's because, well, it's sad to say, but our society has produced individuals more and more over the decades that are just not well in the head. They don't understand how people work because they don't understand how they themselves work because they're sick in the head. And when you're at that level, to try to make a story about people and one that can actually connect to a larger audience, it's just not happening.
I think when I was a school teacher around 1999, 2000, I was told that one of my main jobs was to build up these kids' self-esteem. And I remember laughing, and they looked at me. I was the only male teacher in the whole school, and I said, these kids' self-esteem is perfect. I said, we're here to teach them. I said, self-esteem is a parental chore. And I said, we're going to create an egotistical, narcissistic group of children that can never be corrected, can never, deal with criticism and stuff like that. And they all looked at me like I was teaching. This was like my 4th week teaching. They were like, oh my God, we got to fire this guy. And now it's 25 years later. Those people are making movies, making comics, and everything. They need to be represented and everything. They're just they were mollycoddled. How's that for a good word? They were mollycoddled and then told everything they need to be in everything. They need to see themselves in everything rather than have the ability to see them. They need to physically, or not physically, they need to, that needs to be me rather than I need to see myself in that. They're two different things. Again, I'm not sure if I'm articulating myself well.
Well, I think that actually comes right into Tony's question here. He says, what are my thoughts on Disney introducing adult themes into Star Wars? That's your answer right there, Tony, is the fact that these people, they don't know how to be adults. And this is what they think that being an adult is. Like weird, bizarre things that have some kind of sexual reference. They think that that's being an adult because they don't know how to be an adult because they just never grew up. They don't have the ability to do so. They don't have the mental capacity to do so.
There's a lot of comments that Old Dirty Fatty says lack of respect for the source material. Yeah, they don't like it. I call it lifting their leg. Everybody who wants to write Batman right now, it's like I want to put my scent all over Batman rather than I just want to tell a good Batman story. Yep. Yeah.
Exactly. At this point, their inability to learn is a moral failing. Yep. Well, they don't have a moral basis. It's like my professor used to say. I don't know. It was like my first undergraduate degree. I did in honors, and he said it was just him and I in this honors class, and he said, I love teaching you because whenever I say something, it actually hits a target. Doesn't matter if you like it, doesn't matter if it's right or wrong, it hits something. He said, with all these other guys in the class, it's like shooting bullets into space. You never know you're going to hit anything. And that's the point. They have most of them didn't have any moral foundation. Therefore, they couldn't understand. They didn't have a system whereby to judge whether or not something was right or wrong, and that is a moral failing right there.
Yep. Somebody said, should they bring back regular classic movies, or should they bring back classic movies in the movie theaters regular? Absolutely. One of my favorite experiences, I got to see Casablanca in the movie theaters. My first time seeing it was in this beautiful movie theater in Mineola that had like velvet seats and the big velvet curtains. And I'm so grateful that I waited to see that movie in the movie theater. So yeah, I think why not? I don't want to go see. I don't even know what's playing now. There's nothing I want to see. So let's go see classic movies. These movie theaters got to stay in business. It's not their fault.
Yeah, I would go see classic movies. Like in the 90s, they at my local theater where I was living, they did midnight showings of old movies. Like, and I went to see Princess Bride. They put it back out, and Die Hard. And there was one night they had a triple bill of James Bond movies, and actually Roger Moore showed up and did a little presentation before the movie started, right? And I remember them being at the very least half full of people, right? I mean, if you're going with a empty theater or a half full theater, yeah, show old movies.
Funny that you said that, because last year everybody was busting my chops because I never saw Die Hard. I'm not an action movie guy. I'm a pretty pretentious. I want to see all the superhero movies, and then I want to go see all the art films. So I've never seen a James Bond movie. Everybody always gasps when I say that. So people like, John, you got to see Die Hard. You got to see Die Hard. So I told my wife, I said, they're playing it because they play it in local theaters around Christmas time every year now, So I was like, let's go see Die Hard. And she like rolled her eyes. She's like, you've never seen Die Hard? So we went. We got popcorn. We got soda. And we had a blast. I'm so glad that I saw that movie in the movie theater, and I was like marveled at all the things. I was like, look, that guy's smoking, just stuff that you don't see in modern movies, like some of these jokes that wouldn't get through to today's sensibilities. So yeah, I full on would love to see old movies. I haven't seen a James Bond movie. I'd love to go see Dr. No in the movie theaters now. And
I would love to actually take people to the movies. Like, I got younger members of my family. We sit and watch movies on I have a DVD collection of movies, and we sit and watch them on my computer. But I would pay money to take them to the theater to watch it at a theater.
Oh man, you see Barry Lyndon or those Kubrick classics up on the big screen. Oh man, that would be awesome.
Mal Wyness says, fourth age, in my opinion, people do not engage anymore like they did 2 decades ago. Yeah, absolutely. They don't engage because, well, first of all, again, it goes back to the inspiration thing. if you're going to have a story that doesn't connect you, that doesn't inspire you, it's not just inspiration for the story to create it, but inspire the audience. Why would you engage with it? That's why it's kind of like I always go back to, and people get on my case about this. I hated Enemy at the Gates because it was a Nazi versus a communist. It was like, I don't care. Whoever kills which one, I don't care. You can make me try to feel good for one of them and not the other. I don't care which one wins.
The
They're both
Nazis versus the
evil people. Right?
And at the end of the movie, you just have Godzilla stomp on them both.
So yeah, why would you engage? Like, I disengage from that entire movie. It's like, I don't care. That's why you need stories that's going to connect with someone inspirationally and inspire them in some way. That's part of the hero thing I'm always going on about, but there's plenty of other ways as well, and it could just be the other virtues if you want to be, friendship and all that kind of stuff. The stories that I used to, before I started making comics, stories that I used to write all the time were about friendship, right? It's about different kinds of friendship, different levels of friendship, all these kinds of things. There were stuff like that. But yeah, you have to connect to your audience. Or they're going to disconnect from you and just stop watching.
Yeah. Oh, they're going to play Monty Python and the Holy Grail on the 4th in theaters. Cool. I would pay for a double feature of Basil Rathbone, Sherlock Holmes. Yeah, I would love to go see those Hammer films, like Vincent Price as a witch hunter or a Dracula hunter in the movie theater. My wife and I love going to the movie theaters. We up until COVID, we went maybe once a week, once every 2 weeks. We would see something worth, all right, let's go see this. And we'd make a date out of it. We go to the movie theaters, get a popcorn and a soda, then afterwards go to a restaurant and talk about it. It was fun. But now it's like, what do you want to see? I don't know. There's nothing worth seeing.
There was, when I was growing up, there was a movie theater that only played old movies. And it was basically even stuff that you normally wouldn't want to go see. But the campy Batman movies that they made out of after the television series, like I watched all those. Like we went to see them. There wasn't that many people in the theater, but we went to see them, right? So yeah, re-release old things. That would work if you ask me.
When I went to University of New Mexico, there was the Lobo Theater, and they had the Lobo budget. It was $5. You got a ticket to the movie, a soda, and a popcorn. And then the double budget was $10. So it was like the cheapest date because we were all college kids. So we're gonna go, and they would have midnight movies and stuff. No, I've since seen it. I've seen it twice now. We watched it again. Yeah, it was excellent. It was absolutely excellent. What I liked about Die Hard is he needed everybody's help. He wasn't. Everybody talks about, girls could do everything just like the men. Yeah, but then Bruce Willis needed everybody's help. He needed the fat cop's name to became Urkel's dad. He needed that guy's help. And the scene I always saw in the commercials was did you see Die Hard, RJ? You know what I'm talking about when he's walking on the glass?
Yep.
I was cringing waiting for that scene, and then they never show it. You see the glass break, they cut away, and then they come back and he's pulling glass out of it. That made it even horrible. Like in today's movies, you'd see him stepping on glass, blood flying, but like that, like you knew that he was on glass, and I thought everything about that was good. Yeah, good old Alan as Twinkies. Yeah. I'm a soft spot for anybody who enjoys Twinkies instead of fruit pies. Fruit pies are evil.
That's funny. I was just having a conversation yesterday about how Joe Louis are superior than Twinkies in every way.
What did you say? What are superior?
Joe Louis, or Half Moons. You know what they are?
No, that must be Canadian stuff.
It's basically, you know what whoopie pie is?
Yeah.
Okay, it's basically whoopie pie, right?
Okay.
But chocolate with so that's. I think they're much better than Twinkies. Anyways, Ryan says, what are our thoughts about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe and other fleshed out hero universes?
I was too old for He-Man. That was my little brother's toys, so I completely missed He-Man. So I had no emotional attachment to it. I didn't like the toys. I thought they were just literally they were the same mold over and over again. So I had nothing. Like Transformers was too young for me. I missed that. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I could have, but I got mad. But like G.I. Joe, I missed G.I. Joe. So but Star Wars came out when I was in 3rd grade, so I was like like they shot an arrow, hit me right in the forehead with Star Wars. You know, I was obsessed with Star Wars to the point I went to opening night for the first of the prequels, you know, and people were in costumes and lightsabers and everything, and we all left going, boy, that was a pretty bad movie. Yeah, we forget that we hated the prequels when they came out, and the reaction.
Oh
was,
yeah, definitely hated them.
Yeah, we bullied George Lucas into selling them to Disney, and now we're pretending, oh, we always loved them. But the thing is, my age and above hated them. The little kids who were 5 years old and saw them, they're all now 30 years old and going to see it in the movie theaters again, and they love it. And I got to say kudos to you, because I forget that these movies were made for little kids, and I went in as a full-on adult and saw all the flaws. Because the original Star Wars, as much as I love them, they were flawed. You know,
I agree with John. I was too old for Masters of the Universe, although I do appreciate it now since I know that it's basically a Conan knockoff. Besides that, yeah, G.I. Joe and Transformers were like 3 years too young for me, right? The other kids on the bus had Transformers and G.I. Joe, although I always did watch the G.I. Joe when I come home from school, but you know, I was a little too old to do so. But yeah, a lot of the fleshed out universes for, let's say, a kid of my age, or like, I wasn't as old as John in order to watch the Star Wars from the very first and get into it. But for me, it's the early 80s movies, that franchises like Predator and Aliens and things like that. We just watched them over and over and over again, right?
Yeah, those are so good. Those are so good. Mr. Booth, do you watch Battle of the Planets or Star Blazers? Yeah, I was obsessed with them as a kid too. I would run home because they were on at exactly 3:00. I love
Battle of the Planets. Watch that over and over again. We used to watch, I don't know, there was a very bad Hercules show that used to be on. We would watch it every day while we're waiting for the bus. They had like, I don't know if they were 5-minute shorts or things like that, and they all put together. Basically put on a power ring, and he could gain the strength of 5 men or 10 men or something like that.
Oh wow! Thoughts on Dragon Ball? Dragon Ball is way too young for me. Yeah, I've never seen a second of Dragon Ball, and I know people love it, and I'm sure it's great. It doesn't mean I hate it or anything. I just never saw it. Yeah,
for me, I basically expressed that in one of my videos where I talked about the difference between a fight scene in an Eastern style comic and a Western style comic. And the whole idea of powering up continually, basically, I think goes back to Buddhism and the whole idea that you can connect to the universe and it's just a giant battery and all these kind of things. And to me, it never became appealing to have an unlimited ceiling for powering up.
Yeah. I think it, well, again, I never saw Dragon Ball Z, but to me, I was always like, so they just get more and more powerful, and then what, like they're throwing planets at each other and stuff? You know, to me, it becomes like level topping, and where does it end?
Logic says, what would you do to bring back talented, experienced writers to a writer's room? I don't even know if we can do that at this point. Honestly,
it's against the law to do what I want to do. I just want to, you know, I don't even want, like, you apply. Don't even put your name on the application. Just write me a story, and I'll read these stories. Like, this is a good story. This guy I'll talk to. And then he shows up, and it happens to be a transgender lesbian. I don't care. Is the story good? You know, things like that. Like, just blind applications. You know, get rid of quotas, get rid of DEI, just merit. You know, the joke Matt Barr and I always say is like, I'm in charge. Oh, say, so RJ, you're in charge of DC. I'm in charge of Marvel. And Pedro, forgive me, I can't pronounce your last name, and George Morales the second. They come in and they say, I want to write for you. My first question is, okay, cool. Let me see your comic book collection. And if they, I don't want to see a Comixology account. I want to see dog-eared comic books and long boxes. Because if you can't do that, and then ask the question, what was the first comic you've ever read? RJ, I could ask you the first comic. I'm sure you could talk about it for 20 minutes. You know, I could talk about my first comic book for 20 minutes because we love comics. You know, if you're like, well, you know, it's not so much like Sana Amanat. It wasn't so much comic books, but I used to watch the X-Men cartoon. We all did. You know, but I want to know, what comic book did you sit there and look at and study the panels and act out and make sound effects for? That's who I want writing comic books. You know,
I think that, yeah, quite honestly, the institution's got to fail, and the only way is to build new culture. That's why John and I are doing what we're doing with independent comics. Is like, I don't want to be Stan Lee in the future, but I want someone to be Stan Lee in the future, and we need to start building something new.
do you think this Diamond situation, and because I have a bad feeling that the Superman movie is going to flop, and I have a feeling that this Fantastic Four movie is going to flop, and I think that's going to be the end of these superhero movies, and because of that, the end of Marvel and DC's like only moneymakers, and then Diamond's going to flop. I'm already hearing rumors that DC is gearing up to like license out its characters. Like, what do you think?
I think you're right in the fact that if these things do flop, there's going to be a lot of fallout from it. Just because, again, I was talking. I don't know if it was on your channel or mine, but going over the Twitter site for Marvel right now, which is basically not the movie site because they have a separate one for the movies, but it's got nothing but television shows and movies. I scrolled down for 5-10 minutes. I found one reference to a comic book. That was it, right? So they're pinning all of their hopes on Fantastic Four, the new Daredevil, and DC's doing the same with basically the new Superman that's coming out. And if it flops, if those things flop, they're going to be hurting really bad.
I think things are at an all-time low with comic books. If you go to comic book YouTube, which you're on right now, RJ and I are talking about comics and things that we love, but for the most part, it's everybody hating on this guy and this guy hating on that guy, and and it's like nobody's talking about the comic book. Like this guy's like Adam Lawson, who this guy's the most excited guy about comic books, but your boy Zach is going on and on and on about Eric July. He's like, and Eric July's just released some product. Eric July's just released product, and it's like, dude, aren't you the guy that said we should all be hot dog vendors? Now we got a hot dog vendor in entered the chat, and now you're making fun of him. Like, I don't particularly like Eric July's comics, but he's a vendor. He's selling hot dogs to people, and why are we negatively talking about that? Make your own stuff. Shut up and produce is the way I feel about it. There you go. I just had my rant.
A funny thing, John, it made me think of you, but there was a picture I saw when I was going through the Fantastic Four stuff. It was Pedro Pascal and whoever the woman who was playing Invisible Girl. They were at the Marvel offices, and they had basically the Marvel writers all around them, right? And I'm looking at this group of writers, and I'm thinking to myself, that is a sad group of people. It is a really sad looking group of people. It's like, I'm sorry, but I wouldn't want to be friends with those people, right? Yeah. It's not like the old bullpen where it's like I would disagree with those people. Like, I would probably not get along with Ann Nesenti, but she would be an interesting person to know, right? Or same with
I could see like hanging out with Ann Nesenti in a bar one night, and having like a heated, fun disagreement, and shaking hands and going our separate ways at the end of the night, But Dan Slott, I mean, he's not going to throw a punch at me in real life because he's basically an egg with legs, but you know what I mean? Like, I met Mark Brooks at Comic-Con, and he started spouting off about politics, and I just started smiling. I said, I voted for Trump. I'm a conservative. And he was like, we could disagree. And then but then he blocks me on Twitter, when I, you know what I mean? It's like, in face to face, you pretend to be cordial, I don't know. I just think that they're like, I think Ann Nesenti would be, or at least maybe back in the 80s, I think Ann Nesenti would be like, we had a classical disagreement argument and we could still be friends. I think Stan Lee and I would probably have different politics about a lot of things, but I think Stan Lee is one of those guys who thinks about things, and and it's okay to disagree. You don't think crypto will carry the DC brand?
I don't think so. No, sorry. Although that what is it? In advertising lingo, resorting to children and animals is your last ditch effort.
Yeah. In every sitcom, they introduce the cousin Oliver, a pet, or the evil twin. Yeah.
Logic says, RJ, Hollywood screenwriters hate comics. They always have. That's why they recreate the source material. I agree. This comics, honestly, John and I were talking on his channel just an hour ago, and I think comics can do well. We're talking to Michael Bancroft. We're talking about a story that John wanted to do, and he said, I don't think you could do that in mainstream movies, but you could do it in a comic. I think comics can go much deeper, and you can have much more serious stories and in a fun way, but much more deep and serious stories because, again, one of the point being that they came out every month and you had to write something, right?
Yeah. I just find it so arrogant is you get these like guys right out of college and they're just like, we're gonna rewrite Kirby. Who the hell are you? Like this is a guy who is a World War II veteran. He put kids through college. He created an industry on his back, and then you were 3 years out of college, you're gonna rewrite Kirby. Who the F are you? It's I don't know, if I was in the writer's room and I somehow snuck past everything and now I'm working and like, hey, we're gonna make a New Gods movie. I'd be like, and then I see people like, okay, we changed it. I'll be like, no, like I would probably last like 20 minutes before they throw me out of the office. I'll be like, we can't change Kirby. We got to slavishly make this, Metatron is this and this is this. We can't change it. They'd be like, dude, this doesn't fit in with what Karl Marx said about the scales of economy. And oh my god, I'd be that guy getting thrown out the window and like in that meme.
Yeah, literally. I ran across something about the Minecraft movie and how the people that were writing reviews of it were saying how it was a critique of capitalism. I'm thinking, what is the matter with you people? Seriously.
Yeah. Capitalism, capitalism, the stuff that reduced poverty. Who is it? Sowell said, the only way out of poverty is to generate wealth, and you think the left would be more interested in generating wealth rather than redistributing wealth. It's so basic when you say it like that.
Logic says, RJ, why do fans refuse to see things based on proven history? Superman film will be Guardians of the Galaxy and capes, and Fantastic Four will be Girl Boss. My answer to that question, Logic, is the fact that because we've been steeped so long in this idea of progressivism, they think that old things are not good things. And it's just that simple. And that's not true. That's why I'm always going on about virtue. That's some of the oldest things you can go on about. I think that if you can connect to every new person in a new way, every new generation through virtue and through heroics, and old things are not worn out things, but that's the way progressivism works. Old things are worn out and we no longer want to see them. That's my answer to that question. What about you, John?
I can't disagree. They just, I just call it lifting their leg. They want to put their stench all over it. It's like you can't. It's almost like they're mad that they can't create. So, we all had that one friend who broke your toys and then left. Oh, sorry, your toy just got. That's what I think these guys are. They're like jealous. That like I see these women who get jealous. Oh, that woman's so beautiful. Like they if they had the ability, they would destroy her. And I look at these writers, like, you're not writing anything that's going to last 70, 80 years. Like, that's why they're forcing Kamala Khan down our throats. Like, for the most part, Spider-Man came out, he was a sensation right from the get-go, Superman. But everybody else, they had to build up over time. Like, Wolverine was around for like 20 years before he was the coolest thing ever. But Kamala Khan's got to be the greatest thing right now, instantly. They don't have the patience, they don't have the talent, and they also don't recognize, they're too egotistical. Oh, nobody likes Kamala Khan. Okay, let's let it fall by the wayside. We'll make a new character. No. She was created to be this, and she has to be this. I don't know. Yes. Several novelists and screenwriters think they're better than writers and novelists. Look down a comp. That's yeah.
People today, especially, I think, have this idiotic concept in their mind that if I'm working on something that's going to make more money, I'm a better writer. It's not the way it works.
Yeah. I'm glad now that I see people using my term. He says Jason Aaron is the ultimate leg lifter. Yeah. Denny O'Neil, I think the final nail in the coffin of comics was when Denny O'Neil retired. And then he died a couple of years later. But like, he always said that he was the custodian of Batman. and it was his job to make it so that Batman paid the bills. He goes, you write on Batman, you're the writer for Batman, you're the artist on Batman, you're gonna put your kids through college. You're gonna make a decent life, you're gonna make a good life for yourself, and then DC is gonna make money. And then when you move on, I take Batman and I put him back on the shelf in the same condition that I left it for the next group of people. But while I'm the custodian of Batman, I make sure that he doesn't get, he gets twisted, but he doesn't get broken. He gets bent a little bit, but then he doesn't get broken. Nowadays, people just like, I want to leave my mark on Batman. It's like, I don't care about your mark on Batman. Make your own freaking character. That's why I want to make my characters. I don't want to do to Superman things that I'm going to do to the Patriarch. It's disrespectful to Superman, but it's my character, the Patriarch. I could do these horrible things that I have planned for him. So pick up Heroic Tales number 2 and allow me to make number 3. Logic Finest, do I have any Ripperverse comics other than Isom? There were several different books by different writers. It's a whole world. It's not one box to the story. I got Isom number 1 because somebody said it was the greatest thing ever, and then all of a sudden they decided it wasn't. So, and then I was like, you know what? Maybe it gets better in issue. He fumbled out of the gate. So I got issue number 2, and I just didn't like it. The thing that bothered me was I paid $70 for 2 comics that weren't that good. Now, if they were $10, I would still be buying them. I got to factor in shipping, everything like that. Goodying, Mike Barron sent me a copy, and I bought Alpha Corp because I like Chuck Dixon. I'm going to pick up the Horseman because my buddy said. I have nothing against Earth July and the Ripperverse other than for $35, you got to wow me. And I know the prices are coming down, and if I could see them cheaper, I will pick them up. I have nothing philosophically against it. I have nothing. I'm not one of these detractors or anything like that. It's just I spent $70 on 2 mediocre comics. Like, if you thought my comic book was mediocre, I'm sorry, but it was only $10. You know what I mean? Price does pay into a fact. Price is a factor.
Yeah, one of the things I talked to Eric a couple of times, and he seems like a genuine guy. Yeah. He actually wants to do this, and he actually wants to make comics and create something new. But at the same time, I would say, just from his background, just because you throw money at something doesn't mean it's going to be good.
Right. And I think he's learning from his mistakes. And one of my buddies loves everything he does. And he says he's getting better and better. And to that, I say, great. A rising tide floats all boats. I'm not rooting for anybody to be bad. It's not a secret the way I feel about a certain frog merchant, but I want his books to be good too, because that does nobody any good to make bad comics.
Ryan says, RJ, John, I believe the creators and writers today do not fundamentally study fundamental human psychology and the polarity between men and women. That's why the stories do not connect with the audience. Well, I agree completely. Well, first of all, they don't understand for themselves. And if they don't understand their own psychology and how to interact with people. And I think one of the biggest things wrong with our society, and has been for at least 30 years now, is the idea, I always say, that men and women are equal. They're not equal. They're this, as in they're not the same. You can't switch out one for the other. Right. There might be equal in dignity, but you're not equal in any other way. I always say it's 2 plus 3 equals 4 plus 1, right? There's 2 different equations on each side, but they equal each other.
Men and women are equal in value, in worth, in necessity, but they're different. And that's not a bad thing. They're supposed to be different. If they were the same, then we would just have, one sex, one gender. But they complement each other. We need each other, and we're different from each other, and that's good. So I just get so mad about these people that, like, you think women are different than men. Yeah, I do, because they are. That doesn't mean I hate them. France is different than the United States. Italians are different than Irish. Everybody's different. I thought diversity was a good thing, but like, diversity is such a lie. It's really, we just want to destroy all differences. That's what they want with diversity. I hated it since the first time I heard that concept in the 90s. I remember just like got my hackles up, RJ.
Leonidas says, "What do you think about stories that never advance, and just keep on rebooting?" I don't like it. My stories for my universe is basically a timeline, and people die, and people get born, and people retire, and they have to keep on going like that. To me, I would say, I don't know. How about you, John? I would read a comic book right now where you had, Peter Parker's son who had the same powers as he did as
Yeah,
Spider-Man. To me, that would be a good Spider-Man book.
right. There was a Spider Girl comic, and it wasn't Girl Boss or anything. It was written by Tom DeFalco. Guys, get Spider Girl. It's an excellent comic. It's set in the near future, whatever that may be, where Peter Parker, his leg got damaged by the Green Goblin, so he couldn't be Spider-Man anymore, and they got Mayday Parker, who was born with these powers, and it's a good comic. It's not a girl boss or anything like that. It's just whatever. But I agree with you. In my comics, I'm putting a date on every comic so you could see what it is. Like some stories I'm going to set in the future. Like I like the idea of the patriarch getting to be an old man, and you're going to see his children age if I could stay around longer. I'm going to have stories where he's younger and less experienced. I think that's fun. I don't, and if I want the patriarch to go on forever, like I do have a character called Captain Atlas. He's fundamentally immortal. You know what I mean? So he got his powers. One of his powers is every cell in his body is supercharged like Superman. But like Superman, it's set in the eternal present. Like stories about Captain Atlas, it's going to be dealing with, I got these powers, now I'm immortal. And now I'm seeing my grandchildren die. And you know what I mean? Things like that. I do like characters aging, getting older, maybe putting on a little bit of weight, maybe losing their hair. It makes stakes, and then dying. And again, if any of my characters die, they're dead. There's no multiverse to bail them out. They're all comic book tropes where you don't see the body, the guy falls off the cliff, and then 3 issues later, I was in a cave. I'm not above doing that kind of stuff, especially with the villains, But you know what I mean? When it's obvious the character's dead, they're dead.
Tony says, "What are your thoughts on DC? If DC has to close down the Warner Brothers and having to license their comic book characters, I think that's inevitable. Quite honestly."
Yeah, I agree. We like, let's just say magically you could get the Batman license. Would you use it?
Would I use it?
Yeah.
Well, magically, if I got the Batman license, yes, I would use it. Yeah. I would publish.
I mean, it would be a bad decision not to, right? Let's it's printing money. So as I was asking the question, I realized it was a stupid question. They say there are no stupid questions. Yes, I just asked one. Yes. If I got the Superman license, you better believe it, because it'll be better than DC's, and it's printing money. Imagine Superman with a midlife crisis. Well, he's effectively immortal, so we got a couple of centuries before he has to worry about that. Superman is my favorite superhero, hands down. He's my favorite, but I'm the first to admit that he's too powerful, and that it lessens the stakes. Like I honestly don't think, the arrogance of myself, like I would ever be asked to write Superman, but I don't think I would write Superman. I just think it takes a skilled a guy with a better skill level than I am at this point in my life. Like Superman is it's a character that you really have to do a tightrope with. But I don't think I have the gravitas or the respect. I didn't earn the right to write Superman, is what I'm saying.
Really? Well, I'm not sure this would actually go with a Superman story, but to me, an impactful Superman story, like Superman the movie, when Lois Lane dies, that is one of the best acted, really emotional scenes of any movie, if you ask me. So if you had Superman, which is basically immortal, and you actually went through a timeline, if you got to a place where he married Lois Lane and they had children, and then she actually dies of old age and he doesn't, that would be an impactful Superman story.
Yeah. Yeah. Jewel says is it somebody said, oh yeah, Captain Marvel was way better. I would jump Captain Marvel, Shazam, Billy Batson. I would jump at a heartbeat to write Captain Marvel. Oh my God, but I would love to write that character, to the point where I have a comic called Eddie is Doomed coming out, and the premise of that comic is it's a fan who reads basically Silver Age DC. I can't make it Silver Age DC, so it's Top Comics. And Silver Age DC is going to turn into the Bronze Age. It's going to have a Crisis on Infinite Earth. And Eddie is freaking out because he doesn't like his continuity ending and a new continuity starting. You know, so it's going from hokey Silver Age to grim and gritty Bronze Age, and he doesn't like that. So I'm having. If that works, I want to have a follow-up comic with all of the cartoon, with all the comic book characters, and one of them is going to be the Mighty family, Captain Mighty and Mighty Girl and Mighty Boy. They're my, Captain Marvel family, and I would love to tell this story. So, buy Eddie is Doomed when that comes out, also, ladies and gentlemen.
I think we'll give the last question to Logic's Finest. He says, RJ, right now we have woke versus traditional. If in 3 years following history, the woke goes away and Hollywood returns to traditional content, will the woke people accept that or widen the gap? Honestly, like I said in my last video, I honestly think that when the boomers are starting to shuffle off this moral coil, they're the only thing that are keeping the woke people afloat by their support. Once that support goes...
That was an interesting Saturday thing that you put on. Really, I'm still thinking about it. I'm still processing my thoughts, which means it was good.
Yeah, but no, when I think that support goes, they're just going to be what they should be, which is crazy people standing on a sidewalk with a sign.
Can I brag for a second? As you were talking, I got a message from Brian Christel. I sent him a copy of the complete Mary Sue story that's in Heroic Tales #2, and he just gave me a gushing review. So thank you, Brian Christel. He's the author of Six Gun Gorilla, which is phenomenal. If anybody is looking to buy a copy, go look up Six Gun Gorilla by Brian Christel. Great Western book about a gorilla that goes out with 6 guns and seeks revenge. It's awesome.
To me, Six Gun Gorilla, I don't know. It makes me think of an Art Adams book.
Oh, you're thinking of Monkey Man and O'Brien.
Yeah.
Monkey Man and O'Brien was phenomenal, and it had like less than 6 comics. That is such a blast from the past, RJ. I love that comic, and was he just taking too long? Because he's very slow.
Yeah, most probably.
I mean, that is the kind of thing that Art Adams should maybe make one graphic novel of Monkey Man and O'Brien once a year. You know, I'd wait for that. Yeah, Monkey Man he's a gorilla. He's a gorilla that somehow becomes super intelligent. And then O'Brien, they get exposed to cosmic radiation or some sort of magic science. And she's like a Jane Goodall. And she's this mousy little cute but frail, flat-chested nothing. And she gets exposed to this energy. And now she's this va-va-va-voom, like 6'6" woman. And then Monkey Man, it's funny, he goes from like a savage beast to like he's wearing glasses and reading Proust. You know what I mean? It was such a good comic. I really enjoyed it.
All right. We got to the end of the chat. I apologize if I missed anybody's comments this week, but we're going to leave it there. We've been talking for an hour and 10 minutes, and both John and I think, need to get our rest. The old fellows that we are.
Yeah, I got to wake up at 4 a.m.
All right. Well, I will leave you all once again with the trailer for Phage Blue, which is what I started with. Sign up pages in the description for that. I will go back and edit this video if anybody's watching it later to put John's sign up page for the actual page where you can buy Heroic Tales #2.
It's live right now. Heroic Tales #2. 2 complete stories, only $10. You know, I say, and it's the absolute truth, it's the best deal in crowdfunding right now. You know, it's already paid for, it's already happening. You know, I just, now we're trying to raise funds for issue 3. That's the way I work. So issue #2, it's going to happen. We're going. Renzo, the artist, just submitted 2 pages today. Oh my God, they're so good. Do you ever like? I wrote something and I pictured it in my mind. I sent Renzo the script, but what he drew was vastly different than what I pictured. But yet, it followed the script exactly. Like it's just one of those, imperfections of language. And I'm so glad because it's better than what I wanted.
Exactly. Oh yeah, especially with one of the artists that I work with. I always talk about Elliot. I think I can't remember. He's from Peru, but he did a bunch of the promo art, and I think the back cover page for Thomas Valiant #1, and he basically redefined the character by reinterpreting for Disc, reinterpreting the way her powers worked.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So I just, he sent me a picture, and I remember I was sitting there with my wife, and I'm like, this isn't the page. What is this? And then I went and read the script, and I'm like, this is exactly what I asked for, but through another person's personality. And I'm like, I'm not asking for a change. This is perfect. So, and I find that to be fun, right?
It's the fun of making comics. No,
Right.
that is one.
It's fun, yeah.
All right, like I said, the link is the link is in the description for John's book. Go and take a look there and order his book if you can. I am going to leave also the link for Fade to Blue if you want to sign up there and leave your email address. You will be informed when the project goes live. And with that, I will say goodnight to you, John, and to everybody in the chat. And thank you for everybody to showing up. It was an enjoyable evening.
Thanks a lot. A lot of fun. Thank you. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.